In this video, I'll be talking about Native American arrowheads, true arrowheads, not projectile points. Most of the quote-unquote arrowheads that people find in the United States and North America are actually atlatl dart points. The atlatl predated the bow and arrow by about 8,000 to 9,000 years in North America, and that's why most of what you see in North American archaeology is actually dart points. And dart points can be pretty small, but these, in this case, are true arrowheads. The size is a big indicator. The thinness is also a big indicator. This is what most modern archaeologists or flint knappers would call a Gunther barbed. However, others call them Tuluwat barbed points, and sometimes they're also referred to as Rogue River points. And this one is made from Franciscan chert. Most true arrowheads, and even dart points as well, were made on flakes. Spalls are flakes. A spall is just a fancy term for a large flake. And I'm going to try and zoom in on these and show the workmanship. This is very nice. Franciscan chert is known for being a little bit harder of a material to work. This Native American who was working this had no problem making a very nice barbed point. Hard to say whether or not it was damaged in natural causes or damaged in the hunting process, but it appears to be an old break, so most likely broke in the hunting process. The breaking of barbs and the tip are very common as impact fractures. Same with the base, such as this one here. This is just the tip of a little teeny arrow point. Look how small that is. And I'm going to be talking about the workmanship and some of the different natural tools that can be used to achieve flaking and fineness like this. And this is an agate. And this is agate as well. These are just so thin. And this one's actually made on probably a seam agate. Speckled. I want you to pay attention to some of the very fine parallel oblique flaking on these. The tools used to achieve this kind of flaking have to be very small, or you have to be using the very right spot on your tool to achieve that kind of flaking. And look at this one. It's flaked all the way, and similar to the other one, the base is snapped on purpose. Look how thin that is. I want to, also make this video in appreciation for the craftsmanship of people who lived long ago, and to understand the amount of skill that goes into making something like this. This is a drill made from some sort of jasper, and this is from Southern California, and it's made on a flake. And these were used for bead working, bead making. We can tell it's made on a flake because it's slightly curved, and then on this face there is a little bit of flake remnant. You see that reflecting surface right there? Now, to the untrained eye, you probably don't know what I'm talking about, but that's why you have to flint knap and look at a lot of artifacts to start understanding and recognizing patterns. But you can see most of that is the original flake scar of this core piece, this flake that came off of a core. And here is a sudden side notch from Arizona. Again, very small. This is actually larger for an arrowhead. Many arrowheads can fit on the tip of your finger, and they were still very capable of taking large game. And these are so-called bird points, but realistically they were used to hunt large game. It's tiny little obsidian points. This one's rather crude. This one is Monterey chert, leaf shape. So these are all prehistoric examples, and in this video I'm going to use some of the same tools that Native Americans and other cultures around the world were using before metal to make arrowheads. These are the tools that I use for making arrow points. Now, most of the time, you don't need all of these tools to make a functional arrow point. However, many arrow points in prehistory were made very nicely, and you can tell that there was a lot of time and effort that went into making them nice and sharp and aesthetic. So, usually I'll start out with a hammerstone to knock a flake off of a rock, and sometimes if the flake that comes off is thick, I can reduce it with the hammerstone, or I can use a vertical punch, and I can just place it on the areas that I want to strike and strike it on the top there. Then I'll usually use a crude pressure flaker like this one. I've had this one for a long time, and it's very large and round, and I've been grinding it, filing it, zoom in here, to the outside because it's starting to get pithy. But this antler out here is all good, so I've been flaking with that on the side there. And this is to thin out the piece initially. And then once the piece is thin, I can start using this is an old broken bone. And I can start using a broken bone like this, filed slightly at the end to take smaller flakes. And then to shape, I can use another bone like this. And then for very fine flaking, like the one you saw, some of the flaking that you saw on that obsidian point, this is an old shed, and you can actually see it's quite weathered, almost to the point where it's not hard enough, but I just filed this down. We're going to try to use it today. I'm sure it'll work. And these right here are broken bones. This is another broken bone. This was an older tool, and I had this tool for a long time. You can see where I had it filed. But I heated it up and it got too hot and popped and broke. But when this breaks, sometimes it leaves really nice sharp angles, and you can use these angles to your advantage to make serrations and fine needle tips. When it comes to notching, the tools that I like the most are deer ulnas, sometimes referred to as trigger bones. This is a deer ulna. This is one I found yesterday, and I was really excited to find this because these make excellent tools. And we got a new dog recently, and she chewed my old one. I probably still would have had my old one. This is what's left of it. So, sad to say, but fortunately I found a new one, and I have generous friends. Both Ken Peak and Jason Hansen gave me some really nice trigger bones. This is one that Ken Peak gave me, and this is just the perfect, I'm assuming Ken found this on a hike or something, but this is just the perfect amount of oil to hardness, white bone ratio, in my opinion. You don't want it to be extremely hard and dry, because then it'll be too brittle. But you don't want it to be too oily either, because then it won't work well. It'll just be too soft. And this is just a perfect bone. And you can file these down and file them down, and they just work spectacular. And I'll demonstrate that when I'm notching the arrowhead that I'm going to make today. So without further ado, let's get napping. Before we get started napping, I wanted to show some of these ancient cores. And most of these are not tools themselves, rather they are a source of tool material. And you can tell someone was napping this piece and striking repeatedly, trying to remove arrow flakes, or at least flakes to produce tools with. You see all around this piece someone was removing flakes. Pretty cool. These are some cores from Central Texas, and you can tell that someone removed a nice arrow point flake right here long ago, and maybe a couple on the side here, and then they just ditched the cobble, because commonly in Central Texas the center of the material is not as good quality as this material just underneath the cortex, meaning the material on the very outside of the rock. And you can see they removed a nice flake of that outer material and dropped the core. Similarly, this one also has a nice spaw here, large enough to probably make, you know, a dart point or an arrowhead, depending on how thin it was. But you can see this material in here, not as good. They removed a flake underneath the good material, and you can see they removed some flakes on this side as well, and then tossed the core. The last core I'll show you. But this one is what some people would call a tool, However, I think it's also just a core for flake stone. You can tell they predominantly removed all of their flakes on this face. They were pretty much only concerned with creating platforms on this face here, on this face, and then striking down and removing flakes for stone tools and arrowheads. Right here, all around this piece. And they may have removed some good ones here too. That's just another core, probably from more of a tabular piece of flint, meaning flat. That's a great arrow point flake. So this is the flake we took from that core, and we're gonna make an arrowhead from it. This process just speeds up the initial waste material on the edges where it's too thin. It can help us define the basic shape of where our arrowhead lies and remove all that thick area. So like that area, just remove some thickness there, so I'll orient the point a little bit more over towards this side here. Okay, so now it's time to pressure flake this, and I'll use this fat pressure flaker here, and I'll just start shaping up the edge. And we still have a lot of width to lose. You can see that's sending some nice flakes there. So I just sharpened this tool. And this guy's getting pretty small. This is a new tool. This is that old shed that I sharpened up. It is a little softer. This isn't my best work by any means. Okay, now this obsidian arrowhead is ready for notches. So when I'm doing the notches with an ulna, it's kind of a rolling fashion, a push and a roll. And then a widening. See that? Okay, we'll do the next side. I think it's about right there. About right here. A deer ulna notcher will also get a wear of kind of like a little convex area, and that's when you have to file it down. But sometimes those little notches in the ulna actually help. There it goes. Rid of some of those uneven areas. Well, as with any flint knapping, sometimes you break it. I just broke off the tip a little bit, so we're just going to resharpen it. So here is the finished point. Sierra Tri-Notch variety. I'm kind of regretting putting serrations on it. I kind of liked it just the sharp edge, but that's alright. And the flake that it came from, the scar on this core is right here. You can see we have removed many other arrow point potential flakes from this core, and it's not even done yet. So yeah, that is the finished point. This obsidian is pretty translucent.